Hi guys, Jen here. So I just wanted to do this video on self-harm for the people that are either struggling with self-harm or that have loved ones that are self-harming, just to bring some awareness to the issue, and hopefully it contributes to you. I've had quite a few people that come to me with these kinds of issues as a facilitator, also like eating disorders, addictions. It all kind of like falls into a similar category, OCD issues also. But I also was a self-harmer as a teenager, and so I've got more of an insider perspective on this issue. So the thing that I wanted to get across about people that self-harm is that they're often highly aware. They have like this heightened sense of awareness that, whereas like, maybe you're someone that you can sense when the people around you are in a bad mood before you even walk in the door. For people that self-harm, often like that's turned up dynamically. And so everybody else's emotional energies and their judgments, their projections, they can feel extremely intense to people that do this. And so one of the reasons why like I used to self-harm was because I was really aware of all of the insanity in other people's worlds, but I didn't know the difference between that and me. And so one of the things that self-harming used to do is it used to kind of like show me that I existed. I know that sounds weird, but it's like cutting myself. I'd see the blood and then I'd be like, okay, like I exist. It would also allow me to kind of like feel like I had some sort of sense of control over what I was like, over what was going on in my world. Because the thing is that when you've got that heightened sense of awareness of everybody else's like emotional energy, everything that they're suppressing, that they don't want to talk about, that they're pretending doesn't exist, you can feel really kind of crazy and really like you don't know what to do with what you're aware of. And yet if you're harming yourself, it's kind of like an easy fix, like, and it's like the physical pain is kind of easier to deal with than all of the emotional pain sometimes that you're aware of or that you're in based upon whatever situation that you're in. And so if you are someone that is struggling with self-harm, or you're doing that, something that I would like to invite you to do is to start being in the question of what is it that you're aware of that you think is you, okay? So what if everything that you think is you isn't actually you? So for me, like, because I was so aware, I was aware of other people's self-esteem issues. I was aware of the insanity of abuse in other people's worlds. And so the way in which to deal with all of that is like I would kind of like perpetrate it on myself because I didn't know how to deal with it. And so if you actually kind of acknowledge your awareness of like, and I didn't know at the time, oh, I'm aware. I just thought it was me. I thought I was totally messed up. Like I was just wrong. I was just totally wrong. It wasn't like, 15 years later that I realized how aware and how psychic I was. So if you're struggling with self-harming issues, start to use the tool, who does this belong to? Be in the question, is this something I'm aware of or is this me? Okay? The more you start to do that and the more you start to acknowledge, okay, whatever this isn't mine. Not everything that you're aware of is relevant to you. You're not responsible for everything that you're aware of. Often like people with these kinds of issues or OCD type stuff is they think that they have to do something about the stuff that they're aware of, it's their fault. They make everything like significant and relevant to themselves and make them the problem and live in this like constant state of wrongness. But what if it's not relevant? What if it's not significant? What if you don't have to do anything with the things that you're aware of? So when you get that sense of like, okay, this isn't mine, because what's true for you will always feel light. If you be in the question of like, is this something I'm aware of, and you start to feel lighter, cool. It's something that you're aware of. You don't no longer have to deal with that. Unless you do. Unless it is something that you do have to deal with. So be in the question of, is this relevant to me? Everything that isn't relevant, you can just let go. You don't have to process it. You don't have to do anything about it. The other thing you want to do is start expanding your energy out. Because what can happen is when you're highly aware is you can start to contract down around particular energies. So for me, like manic energy, like anxiety, you know, if I was around people that were doing that kind of energy, I'd start to like contract my energy down and feel like I just couldn't cope. And so I would use the self-harming as a coping mechanism because I didn't know how to deal with those energies. And rather than contracting your energy down, if you expand out as an infinite being, like there is no edge of you. And if you get that, if you start to like be bigger than this planet, what can happen is any emotional intensity that you're aware of, it doesn't feel as big, it doesn't feel as overwhelming. And from that space, you can actually still be you and get a sense of you without taking on all of the emotional energies of other people or thinking that's you. So the other thing, like for me, is at the time I was like self-harming, I was also in a lot of pain myself. And it was kind of a way of, I guess, making that easier to deal with, again, like because it was like then a physical thing rather than emotional. So if you are self-harming and you've kind of like, you're being in the question of like, what am I aware of? What are you trying to kind of like manage, or what are you trying to process, or what are you trying to heal or what result are you trying to create by self-harming? Okay, so is it a way in which to feel calm? Is it a way in which to feel better about yourself? I know that sounds weird. Are you trying to heal something in somebody else's world? Because even if you're a teenager watching this, and you're not like a professional healer, you can have all sorts of healing capacities. Are you trying to heal someone close to you by taking on all of their pain and suffering and everything they've suppressed in their world, and then internalizing it and making yourself wrong for it, and then hurting yourself in order to deal with it? So if that's a yes, if that makes you feel light, what if you didn't have to do that anymore? You can't actually heal anyone that doesn't want healing. So rather than like taking it on and then making yourself wrong for whatever it is that you're feeling, what if you just kind of like got to the space of allowance of whatever that is, let them have their journey and acknowledge the healing capacities you have, but know that you don't have to heal anybody. What if you actually allowed yourself to have the freedom, the joy, and the fun and adventure that other people aren't often willing to choose? Because here's the thing is like, one of the things for me, I know that when I was self-harming, I was surrounded by a lot of unhappy people. I was surrounded by a lot of people that had suppressed so much of the like stuff that they you know didn't want to deal with, didn't want to look at in their worlds, and that made me feel insane because I was so aware. And so the other thing with that is that if you are highly aware, and if that kind of like, if you don't acknowledge your awareness, you can often get really angry at like just everything because people are functioning from the lies. They're not being truthful with you. And so what if you actually acknowledge what you're aware of? What if you didn't have to get angry at the lies that other people perpetrate on themselves? It may seem like people are lying to you when they're suppressing stuff and they're not kind of acknowledging it, and then you're kind of like, you know, surrounded by them and you don't know how to deal with that. But they're actually just lying to themselves. It's not personal. So if you acknowledge, okay, cool, like this person has all of this suppressed stuff. It's not actually relevant to me. They're not willing to look at it. They're not willing to change it. You no longer have to be the effect of whatever it is that's going on for them. And so, like, what if you could choose to be everything that you are beyond other people's worlds? What if you didn't have to be the effect of other people's worlds? So if you have like any kind of self-harming issues, you might want to also look at like who or what you think you're controlled by, because often it's also a way in which of gaining control back. when you feel like you're under somebody else's control. So what could you choose? What could you be different that would allow you to feel like you are the one in control in your life without having to hurt yourself? So if you require any kind of like assistance in kind of like clearing whatever it is that's self-harming, or these kinds of like issues are, you know, the reason why you're doing that, I do have a couple of audios that I'll leave in the comments that can contribute to you clearing like whatever subconscious programming you have. Because there can be so much. There can be like abuse dynamics. If you've been abused, you might be self-harming in order to try and process or understand the abuse. You may be perpetrating the abuse on yourself that others have perpetrated on you. You may be aware of abuse in other people's worlds and you're like perpetrating that. So there can be many different, like you may have been like told by your family members that you are the wrong one, like you are the scapegoat of the family, and so you're perpetrating that wrongness to validate other people's realities. So there's many different reasons like why, but what if it all comes down to kind of being a coping mechanism for awareness? And so if you do need some assistance, I've got some audios that can contribute, can kind of clear the subconscious programming that makes you self-harm. If you're watching this and somebody you care about self-harms, and you're wondering like, what can you do to help them? The first thing is to get to allowance of what it is that they're doing. So allowance is having no point of view. It's just being interesting point of view about it. And I know that that can be really tricky, especially if like it's your child and you know they're you know you're worried about them and it's making you anxious and stressed. But do remember, these people are extremely sensitive to energies, and the more like you focus on the issue or it being a problem from that place of kind of like needing them to change, the more you create that place where they feel like somebody's trying to control them, and the more it will actually kind of often like make them keep doing the same thing. And so if you be the space of interesting point of view, it actually gives them the space to look at whether or not that choice is really truly working for them. The other thing is you want to look at what is it in your world, like if you're extremely close to them, are you suppressing anything? What is it that you could kind of like often, you know, you want to focus on fixing the other person. What if you actually were the invitation to them choosing to be something greater and to like healing themselves and loving themselves by actually being that for you? So the more, rather than like focusing on the wrongness of them or focusing on the wrongness of the issue and feeling like you've got to fix and heal them, what if you actually were willing to be the energies of everything you desired them to be? So the loving themselves, being happy, being joyful, feeling the like, just having the adventure of living, like all of that stuff. So the more you're willing to actually lead by example, instead of trying to fix the issue, often that can be a huge contribution in allowing them to shift, because it is like such a way of people feeling like they have control in their world, that any kind of attempt to try and help them will often feel like they're being controlled, and so they will just resist. So the less you do that, the less point of view you have about what they're choosing, the more likely they will choose something different. And when you're willing to be that space of allowance, you can actually get to like be more vulnerable with them. So, which is actually having no walls or barriers and just kind of like being like, hey, I'm here. Like, I'm here. Like, do you need a chat? Do you need a hug? Like, what do you require? The more you can be that from no point of view, which actually means being willing to be it with you, okay? You've got to be willing to be vulnerable with you. You've got to be willing to be an allowance of you in order to be an allowance of them. If you've got any kind of self-sabotage programs in you, if you've got any kind of like suppressed rage or anything like that, it will stop you being an allowance of what it is that they're going through. And so you won't be able to reach them in the same way. So the more you're willing to let go of your stuff, the more you can actually be the space of just being with them. And by being with them from the place of kind of having like an open conversation about whatever is going on, it kind of will allow them to have ease with whatever insanity that they're trying to process that they don't know how to process. So the more you're willing to not have to lie to yourself about whatever it is that you're dealing with, the more vulnerable you can be with the people in your life that you care about that are maybe struggling with these issues. And the more you can then kind of reach them energetically, because then you don't have to have any wall between them and you, because you're actually willing to just receive wherever they're at. But you're willing to receive that because you don't have a point of view about anything about you, that can be then the invitation for them to clear whatever judgments, whatever points of view, whatever wrongness that they have of them that is making them hurt themselves or their body. And so if you need any assistance with that, I highly recommend attending a Relationship Done Different class, which allows you to get to the space of intimacy with you, that allows you to be that vulnerability and that allowance, that will kind of allow you to just be that space of being with someone without needing to change them, without needing to heal them, and being an invitation for them to choose something greater. So hopefully that contributes to you guys. Leave a comment if it did. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments also. And if you need any assistance, feel free to check out the audios that will be listed. And I also do one-to-one sessions if that's required. So have a great day, guys. See you later.